Good morning, grade 11s. I hope that you are healthy and are coping with all of these changes in the world at the moment. I'm hoping that it will slow down and things will get back to normal. So for now, we are going to continue learning about biology, and right now we are kind of moving into the unit of homeostasis. This cell signaling, meaning how cells communicate with each other, is a really important part of learning about homeostasis. Basically, what homeostasis is maintaining the internal environment, a stable internal environment. And many times I've told you guys that the human body is designed to always have equal amounts, moderate amounts of things. If you have too little or too much, it's not going to function as well. So cell signaling allows cells to basically allow things to happen. So this is going to be part 1 of the discussion. And you will find this PowerPoint in OneNote under PowerPoints. So first of all, what's the point of cell signaling? Well, they need to be able to communicate between cells. And this is done in different ways. And a lot of it is focused on distance. So how far are cells away from each other? So for example, I am going to show you some different types of cell signaling, and it depends on how far the cells are away from each other. Now, just to give you an idea, these are the 4 main ways that cells are going to signal each other. We are going to be talking mainly about contact dependent today and the other ones later. But for now, what I want you to know is just an overview of what we're going to be talking about in this discussion. So first of all, I'm going to go a little out of order. We're going to start with contact dependent, which is at the very bottom here. Now, if you take a look at the diagram here, in order for contact dependent to take place, it's literally what the name says. They are in direct contact with each other, the cells. So they either will be sending messages, as you can see here, by one part kind of fitting into the other. This is called a ligand receptor complex when the 2 cells join. So it's either going to be the cells joining, or the cells can actually be attached to each other and they can send messages to each other that way. Basically, the kind of the fundamentals of this is you are going to have a control cell. And the control cell, what the responsibility is to actually send the message. And then you're going to have a target cell. And what the target cell does is it's going to receive that message and then perform a certain task. All right, now, these 2 here, the paracrine and autocrine, these are not in direct contact with each other, but it's classified as local signaling, which means that they are not that far apart from each other. Now, as you can see in the diagram here, if you look at the autocrine here, so note this is kind of a weird one. The control cell, which again is the cell that's sending the message, and the target cell, which is the cell that is actually receiving the message, is the same cell. So see how it's actually sending out the message here, and then it's going to bind to a receptor on the same cell, and it's going to tell the cell to perform a certain task. That would be classified as autocrine. Paracrine is this one here. So what happens here, as you can see, the control cell is sending a message and is now going to go through the intercellular fluid, and it's going to find a receptor on another cell, and that would be the target cell, and then what will happen is it will perform a certain task. So that one's called paracrine. These are both local, meaning they're close together, but not in direct contact as we saw in the first example. The endocrine This one's kind of different from the other ones, and that's the picture that is here. So what happens in endocrine is, and this is actually one of the things we're going to be talking about in the homeostasis unit quite a bit, is the endocrine system. The endocrine system involves hormones. So the way hormones work is, as you can see here in this picture, signals are sent out by glands. So if you can think about some glands, we will get into that next time. So some glands would be the thyroid gland, the pituitary gland. They send these cell signals out into the bloodstream. And they have to travel longer distances in order to reach the target cell. But you can see it's actually the same process, right? So it's traveling a further distance, it's traveling through the blood. It will then attach to the cell by a receptor protein, and then it will tell the cell to perform a certain task. Okay, so that's just kind of an overview of all the different things that we're going to talk about with types of cell signaling. And now what I'm going to do today is just go into more detail on contact dependent. So what you're going to have to be able to do is you're going to have to know some examples, like actual examples of direct contact cells. So for example here, this is just kind of general. This would be an example of direct contact where the cells are actually already like a tissue, for example, and they can send messages back and forth. This is more specific for plant cells. Because plant cells are in contact with each other, they actually have this hole in the cell called a plasmodesma. You might remember that. We actually talked about that in grade 9. We were talking about how viruses can be transmitted around plant cells. So what happens is they can communicate via these holes in the cell between the two different plant cells. Here's the other example that I was showing you. Instead of just actually being like attached to each other, they have these receptors, right? And so when they bind together, they will send messages to each other. Now, let's get into specifics. And one of the things you're going to have to kind of recap here is the immune system. We didn't get into as much detail with this in grade 9, but these are perfect examples, the immune system, on how it actually communicates with each other in order for certain tasks to occur. So let's just start off kind of from the beginning. So a microbe here, that one is considered, now I don't know if you guys remember the term antigen, but let's just pretend. Okay, let's actually not use the COVID-19 example because that's just too close to home. Why don't we use strep throat? So let's just say strep throat, which is caused by the Streptococcus bacterium, enters your system. If you've ever had strep throat before, it's pretty bad. You get a very, very, very sore throat, difficulty swallowing, and you actually need antibiotics in order to combat it. However, the immune system does elicit a response. So the antigen comes in, and a macrophage, and if you recall, the macrophage is this cell. It's a type of white blood cell. And what it does is it will come in and it will find this antigen and it will engulf it by the process of phagocytosis. Now, what happens next is kind of crazy. So it sends, basically what it does is it's trying to figure out the chemistry, the biochemistry of the antigen. So once it does that, it creates more of this antigen inside, and then it actually puts it on the surface of the cell. So you can see these little green things. That's actually the antigen that came in, and it made these special type of antibodies, and it attaches to the actual macrophage. Now, why is this important? Because helper T cells, and if you recall that T cells are a really important part of the immune system, they all have different roles and they will elicit a response. So this helper T cell will then attach, okay, to this macrophage that is showing this, and now it's going to send a message to the other cells to kill off the strep throat. Now notice, can you see here why this would be an example of direct contact? If you look at number 4, because of the binding between the two cells, this would be your control cell and then this would be your target cell. Here's another example. These ones would be called, now they call them killer T cells. They are also called CD8 cells. Or, I don't know if you guys remember cytotoxic T cells. Now, what they are going to do is they are actually stimulated by the helper T cell. So what happens is once the helper T cell says to them, go and kill this cell. So what it will do is this is going to be our antigen again. The killer T cell comes along, notice the attachment, the direct contact attachment, and when it does that, it elicits a response. Now, if you can see here, what actually is the response being elicited? It's an enzyme. Now, this enzyme is being released into this antigen, and what do you see happening to the antigen? It dies. So that's how your army of your cytotoxic T cells actually kill the antigen, which was the strep throat. Here is another example. Actually, I really like this one. They're called, and I don't know if you recall, again, we did talk about this a long time ago in grade 9, the natural killer cells that are moving around your body. Now, these are not considered a specific response. They are basically there to protect you at all times. It's not if you have strep throat and then all of a sudden they come about. They're around all the time. Now, what they do, and this is in a normal situation, is they will come in contact with your healthy cells. And notice how, when they come in contact, right, as long as they can attach to the cell, what that will do is it will tell the natural killer cell that this is a healthy cell and they don't need to kill it. Now, what are they actually attaching to? You may see this term. MHC1 is a type of receptor that they have recognized on cells. And there actually are a lot of studies going into these now and how they actually function. So when they do attach and it's found to be a healthy cell, then the cell will be released and it will not be killed. Now, if you take a look down here, remember when we talked about viruses? Viruses are found inside of cells, and what happens is they use the cell's machinery to create more viruses. Now, when that's actually happening, notice what's missing from the infected cell versus the healthy cell. Hopefully you see that these MHC markers are gone. Now, when this goes to try to attach, it can't. There's nothing there for it to attach to. But notice that it also has another attachment site. Now, if this is present on the cell, that means that the cell is infected with a virus. So what the natural killer cell will do is it will now kill off this cell because it has a virus in it. And that's how this protects us from viruses. And this is a natural immune system response. And that's actually why, one of the reasons why some people can fight off this COVID-19 virus, because of their healthy immune system. If you don't have these natural killer cells, and that, it happens with age, right? And with people who have autoimmune diseases, it makes it a lot more difficult to fight off these viruses that are happening right now. Now, can you see again why this would be considered cell signaling? Here, this would be your control, and then this would be your target, right? Because that's the one that you're going to be targeting, and in this case here, they're going to be killing it off. All right, that's all we're going to do for today. If you have any questions about this discussion, please just give me an email, and I will send you guys, I guess, another video if you like this. It's probably the best way we can do it for now, later on in the week. And just continue to be working on your my goodness, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, on your assignment that I gave you before, your experiments, and we will touch base soon. Take care and stay healthy.